Welcome back, America. Matt Continetti is the Washington Free Beacon columnist, AEI scholar, contributor to Commentary Magazine on the podcast most days. He joins me. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm well, Hugh. How are you?
I'm good. I want to talk to you about the national security team that the president-elect is rolling out. I'm going to leave Pete Hegseth for a second. I have to make my disclosure because this will go out on YouTube. My son has worked for Mike Waltz for 4 years and was 4 years in the Trump administration. I got nothing to do with that, but I always disclose my son worked for Michael Waltz. We got Hegseth, Michael Waltz at National Security Advisor, Ratcliffe at the CIA. We've got Elise Stefanik at the UN and Marco Rubio at State. We are waiting on the DNI, the AG, and the FBI. What do you make of the national security team to date?
I think it's very impressive. I think a few things about it. One is, people often label Donald Trump as an isolationist, but anyone who looks at these pics, Hugh, can see that's not what Trump is about. Trump is about what he calls peace through strength. What that means is projecting a very tough image, trying to build deterrence, having a national security team that inspires confidence and boldness, but not engaging in superfluous military interventions, being careful to hold your power in reserve, but being able to intimidate enemies before you actually have to use it. I think that this team that's being built out is exactly fitted for that purpose. One other thing, look at this team. It's good for Israel. It's bad for Iran. It's, I think, good for Taiwan and bad for the Chinese Communist Party. And I also think in relation to the Ukraine war, it's a team that is retrofitted to say, okay, this is a mess. Biden has created a mess in Ukraine. How do we fix it? How do we get a good solution and end the war? So I'm very pleased with the picks so far, and I think that all of them will be easily confirmed by the Republican Senate.
I'm going to double back with you. I know Ratcliffe a little bit. I know Elise Stefanik on the radio and Senator Rubio in person and on the radio. I'll double back on the one. I know Mike Waltz very well. I want to talk about Pete Hegseth, who I only know from the radio. I think I've met him once or twice, but I have read his book, The War on Warriors, and I interviewed Pete about it. I want to read you something, Matt, and get you to read. This is why I think people are having heart attacks on the left and on X. He writes things like this. The new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the former Air Force Chief of Staff, CQ Charles Brown, could maintain only 7 out of 10 planes as combat ready, but found plenty of time to push a DEI CRT agenda in his branch. CQ happens to be black, which doesn't matter to me one way or another, but means a lot to him, but more on that in a moment. The mighty F-35 was designed to take out Chinese and Russian aircraft before they left the runway. In 2023, the Air Force got a $15 billion upgrade on the F-35, and now leaders are recommending the 5th-generation fighter receive a 6th-generation replacement. But planes need pilots and maintenance, and General Brown had those fighters at 68% readiness for war in 2022. The F-22, the Air Force stealth fighter of the future, stood at 50% readiness under General Brown. With CQ Brown, the Air Force got to celebrate its first minority chief of staff, yet it had places that were not mission capable of defending American-controlled skies. So instead of making soldiers get better at flying airplanes, Secretary of Defense Austin changed the standard for what is considered capable. General Brown quickly claimed it was a, quote, more holistic view of readiness. Holistic, in case you didn't know it, is Latin for BS. And he used the real word. What I think the DEI CRT people are dead in the water at the Pentagon, and I think change is coming to the 5-sided building. What do you think?
Well, I think that the defenders of the Pentagon in recent days, and especially in the hours since Donald Trump nominated Pete Hegseth to be Secretary of Defense, are acting silly. I mean, what they're defending bloat. They're defending a Pentagon that has had trouble meeting its recruitment goals. They're defending a Pentagon that has overseen a deterioration of the international stage like never before. I think this is a very interesting pick, Pete Hegseth. When I look at the team Donald Trump is assembling, a few things stand out, Hugh. One is loyalty, right? Trump wants people that he trusts, and certainly he has a relationship with Hegseth now going back almost a decade. The second thing is communication skills. All of these people nominated so far are very good at presenting Donald Trump's arguments to the American people via the media. And of course, Pete Hegseth has had a very successful career in media at Fox. But more importantly, when I look at Hegseth, I see somebody, he's obviously an outsider. I mean, he's going to be stepping into a very big role, but he's someone who has spent a lot of time working with the troops. He's not there to impress the general officers. He's not there to impress the bureaucrats at the Pentagon. He's somebody who has had, from his own experience and decades since, real relationships with soldiers. And I think that's going to be a boost in morale. You listen to Hegseth, you listen to him talk about his book, the way he presents himself, all of the work he does with the troops. I think that's going to help the Pentagon reach its recruiting goals. So it's going to be a fight. I have no doubt about that. But I think he's capable. I think the hearings will be something. I'm looking forward to him jousting with the Democrats on Senate Armed Services. But I think in the end, he's going to be there, and he's going to be a disruptor in a good way.
And I want to pick up on that. Before one name came down the trolley, I said, I only have two. I don't care how many women, how many men, how many minorities, what their faith are. I want competence and eloquence. Because I think one of the things I picked up from the commentary podcast is that the president-elect often makes arguments that are difficult for people who are not trained in what he's talking about to understand. And eloquence is about persuading the American people why we have to do things. And if I look at the list, Hegseth, Ratcliffe, Stefanik, Mike Waltz, these are eloquent people. They can fashion arguments, and arguments have to be made about why, for example, big armies got to shrink and big navies got to grow, and we have to get submersible, I like to say, ships, satellites, submarines, cyber, and supersonics, hypersonics. We've got to change the Pentagon, top to bottom, and I think disruptor is your word, Matt. Explain what you mean by disruptor for the audience and the Steelers fans who elected Donald Trump.
Well, we know disruptors. I mean, just think about someone like Elon Musk, right? I mean, someone who comes in, innovates, is bold, upsets the status quo. And I think that's what Trump is looking at with Hegseth at the Pentagon. Someone who's loyal, someone who can explain Trump's policies, but someone who is not beholden to this bureaucracy. And Hugh, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you think about the Pentagon, you think about how it has declined in recent years. We spend all this money on defense. What are we getting for it? You know, I mean, the world is not a better place after 4 years of Joe Biden. We're having trouble meeting our recruitment goals. The Pentagon establishment has spent a lot of time and effort on political correctness and DEI and LGBTQ stuff, rather than looking at how to build the most lethal and dominant fighting force. Now, of course, we know that the American fighting man and woman, I mean, they are at the top of their game. And that's why I think you're going to see Hegseth. He's going to appeal to the soldiers. He's not going to necessarily be someone who always gets along with the general staff. But I just learned the other day, we have so many general officers now, and they're competing for bureaucratic territory rather than thinking about how do we make the world a peaceful place and America's fighting force what it once was, which was extremely intimidating and extremely competent. So if Hegseth can do that, I think he'll have a very successful tenure as Secretary of Defense.
You know, Matt, I know you've got military in your family. I've got a son-in-law, and nephew in the military. I hear they don't talk politics with me, but I do want to know about lethality and the deployments that they're on. But I've got a bunch of people who email me. Like right now, the best emailer I have is a major. He might be a lieutenant colonel selected in the Marine Corps. And he just got out of the War College, and he's studying the strategy of the Israeli war in Gaza. He hadn't been studying Lebanon. These people are smart when you get to be field officer rank, major and above. And they're experienced, and they've been shot at. I said on Larry Kudlow yesterday before Pete Hegseth, and again, Mike Waltz is a friend of mine, so you can discount it. My son works for him. It is something, I don't think, it's not in the job description, but to have been in a gunfight and to have killed people and to have rescued people and to have led Afghan troops and our special force, the Green Beret. That's not in the job description, but it sure is going to make you hesitant to send Americans to be sitting ducks in Beirut or any other place. You're going to want to win the war the way we used to win the war, which is fast and get out. I'm just thrilled with this team. And I hope, again, the hardest job, and this is what I want to talk to you next, is the Attorney General. But any closing thought on Elise Stefanik at the UN?
Oh, only that I'm making the popcorn because, Elise Stefanik is in a long line of UN ambassadors who Republicans appoint to go there and to get that place in shape and to make the arguments defending America, defending the West, and defending the state of Israel. If Elise Stefanik brings a tenth of what she brought to that hearing with the college presidents on anti-Semitism to the UN, that place will be rocked, and I can't wait to see it, Hugh.
Yeah, Moynihan, Kirkpatrick, and I think we're going to be adding Stefanik to that. Nikki Haley did a fine job, but she was not blistering people, and we need people. There wasn't an Israel-Iran war underway. I want to turn to Attorney General. I'm a alum of the Department of Justice. I worked for Bill Smith and Ed Meese 1,000 years ago. A flamethrower has to be taken to the place to melt the resistance out of the wall, Matt. And I mean, not only every assistant attorney general, but every deputy assistant attorney general, every supervisor, everyone who had anything to do with Jack Smith, the weaponization of everything, the plea deal for Hunter Biden. It's just corrupt at the leadership level. I don't know who Donald Trump, I want Ratcliffe to take that job because he's a tough son of a gun. What do you think about finding an AG? We got a minute and I want to keep you for the break.
Well, I think it's going to be a similar pick to what we're seeing. Someone who's loyal to Trump, someone who is good on television, and someone who understands exactly what you said, Hugh. The resistance is getting back together. And I think two of the bureaucratic locations of it in this next Trump administration will be one, the Pentagon, and two, DOJ. And you already see preparations being made. So whoever gets that job is going to not only have to enforce the rule of law more broadly in the United States, but they're also going to have to enforce the rule of law in the Justice Department. So you want someone who's impressive and competent, and we'll wait and see who that is.
And an FBI director. I'm coming back with Matt Continetti. Well, welcome back, America. Matt Continetti. From 1989 to 2016, I was a lawyer in private practice representing landowners who needed to develop land for houses, for commercial buildings, for government projects. The biggest impediment to land development in the federal government is the Department of the Interior, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Environmental Protection Agency. It's a blob that gives permits or don't give permits or lose your file, et cetera. Do you think Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Lee Zeldin, Pete Hegseth, and whoever he puts in at the Corps, and whoever becomes the Department of Interior, can actually unleash American productivity? Because home building is our new car company. Used to be car building was what employed Americans. Every new house is 4 jobs on site and 10 jobs downstream. And that's not big buildings or roads. It's this bureaucracy that stops growth. Are you an optimist?
I think it could be done. I think it's going to be tough. I think having Elon Musk involved in the administration may be the difference maker between Trump 1 and Trump 2. I mean, it's fascinating to see how Musk is involved in these decisions, Hugh, and this announcement yesterday that he and Vivek are going to be in the endeavor of the Department of Government Efficiency. I don't know if it's going to be an actual department, but two of them, that's a department, right? And certainly what you say about the Department of Interior rings true to me, Hugh. I'm going to make a confession to you. One of my first summer jobs was at the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. I'm a Beltway boy. So I have had experience in the belly of the beast. And let me tell you, that place, it can lose some bureaucratic weight. I can tell you that from a personal experience.
You can cut it in half. You can fire everyone at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the species will be better. It's just that it's dysfunctional. It doesn't do its job. I can't tell you how many times I would keep 2 copies of every file because I'd send it into the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It would be lost. And they'd go, we can't find it. I said, here it is. It's literally the worst place I've ever had to deal with, other than the California Coastal Commission. California Coastal Commission,
as they say,
abandoned hope.
Good enough for government work. That's what that was.
And it wasn't.
No, right. It was worse. Yeah.
So the question is, The thing that the president-elect said, they have to be done by mid
26. Yeah.
2026. And that's not soon enough because you get two reconciliations, then we're going to lose the Congress because we're going to get whacked in 2026. That's just the cycle of American politics. You get two reconciliations. So if you want to combine and shrink the government agencies, you got to get into the second reconciliation, which will be due in February and March of next year. Do you think they can move that fast?
Well, Congress will try, and of course there are a lot of incumbent interests in Congress. But I'm looking at the executive branch, Hugh. It's been undercovered, but I do think Trump is going to try some old techniques to kind of cut down on the bureaucracy. Things like impoundment, things like rearranging the bureaucratic map, moving agencies, maybe closing down some programs that he can do through executive power. So I think what we'll see in the end of 2 years, if this is a success, is a federal government that looks different than the one that Donald Trump enters into office with. And let's not forget, too, we're hearing all these stories in the Washington Post and elsewhere, Beltway media, about how the bureaucrats in the administrative state are terrified of Trump and they're planning to retire or find other jobs. Of course, I hear that and I say, good, and I think that
Good.
will actually be something that will help achieve the goals that Musk and Trump are setting out for themselves.
Well said. Matt Continetti, I look forward to the commentary pod today. Follow him on X at Continetti. Read him in the Washington Free Beacon. Follow his work at the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you, Matt.